Sherman.
Here.
Jennifer Silva.
Here.
Kelly Ward. Also seated at the board table this evening, this morning, sorry, habit, is Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Earl Metzler.
Our purpose here this morning is to, as a special meeting, is to look at the renominations to either re-elect our certified educators who are on continuing contract. I appreciate all of you being here this morning. We are filming for broadcast later, but not broadcasting live this morning. So it will be available on a channel near you at a later date if you wish to watch it all over again. I'll call the board to recognize that in your packet, and that's why I'm asking that our public not stand behind our members. We have some confidential information that I want to keep that way. If at any time we feel like we need to have a discussion where we're mentioning, obviously, names of employees or positions of employees or anything that's identifiable about employees, I'm going to err on the side of super caution and ask to go into non-public. And then I'll ask you to clear the building completely, not stay in the building, but to please exit, and then we would call you back in after the non-public. So with that in mind, we do have in your packets some of the information, I believe almost all of it, that you asked for. The enrollment as of April 2018. Thank you. What I called head count based on April 13. You wanted those through, so that's some interesting information. And then I have the renominations list that I'm going to pass out, and then I'll look for a motion. As you can see, this list had the additional information. I think it was Mr. O'Neill that asked for their 17, these are certified, what I call vested employees that are on continuing contract. You asked for the 17-18 assignment, and of course they have not been assigned an 18-19 assignment yet, of which they would only be assigned if they were certified or qualified in that area. So everybody got a copy? I'll give you a second if you'd like to look at it, and then I'm looking for a motion.
Can I just ask a question on this? Are the names on this copy the same as the names on the previous nomination list? Are there any changes to that? I mean, unless you want...
Let's get a motion on the floor.
No,
I'd really like a motion on the floor first, Kim, because it's this renominations list, and then I'd be happy to have you ask
Okay.
that question.
I'll make a motion to strike
motion?
10 names from this list.
Can we get a motion to get this list on the floor, and then, I
I'll
just
make-
think that's out of order. I just
All right.
think that is out of proper order. So I'd like a motion on the floor. Sarah,
I'd like to make a motion to accept the superintendent's list for renomination.
second?
I'll second.
Now I'll open it up for discussion or questions.
Are the names on this list the same as the names on the previous list that we received on April 5th?
I can't answer that. I haven't looked at every single name and compared it to the last list. Are you want me to ask Dr.
I would
Metzler
appreciate
that
that.
question?
I would appreciate that.
Dr. Metzler, you feel comfortable answering that?
Certainly, this is the original list that you received on April 5th with the request to put the 17-18 assignments in a column. You'll notice to the right of that, it gives you the district years completed and out-of-district experience to the right of that.
Another question. Yes, Jen?
Last meeting, we talked about having some options presented to us. Are there any options to present to us this morning?
Options budget-wise, options staffing-wise. You said options. I think that was something that Mr. Doobie asked as well.
Well, I think if we as a board...
Business manager is here. Hang on. The business manager is here, and I thought we were talking about options like budget-wise or...
Well, I think if we're being told as a board that we're gonna need to transfer money from salary lines, from the salary line to other places, then I think we should understand what impact that's gonna have on our staffing.
So we would need to have some financial information, right? Beyond.
Or what is that gonna look like to our staffing? Because
That was one of the questions
when
Dan,
I, you know,
I'd asked.
when I think about this list and the impact it has to the staffing, I don't know what's gonna be impacted. But I think we as a board have a responsibility to really look and see what do we value in education moving forward for the district. I mean, we have a lot of things that we offer that are great things to have, but not required.
But our authority is to act on the nominations from the superintendent. This list is the.
But without knowing what direction that we're going, approving this entire list takes options down the line off the table.
Correct.
But these are vested, if you've read the information from our lawyer, these are vested employees that have credentials and are expecting employment.
Not all of them are on continuing contract.
That is correct.
And, you know, I don't want to say we don't value our non-continuing contract people, but when we look at our optional programs that we have, you know, things like engineering, theater, athletics, AP, FLES, pre-K, deans, full-time K, tripod, orchestra, elementary band, small class sizes, those are all things that we value, but they're all optional. They're all nice to have. I mean, I want to make sure that we're providing for all of our needs first.
Madam Chair?
Brian, yes, sorry. I was just digesting what
I understand.
Mrs. Silva said.
Yes, we received, all of us, this 3-page letter from the lawyer, but right in the midst of that letter, the school board does have the authority to not re-elect a teacher who has been nominated by the superintendent. Right in the letter. So,
I don't think you need to read that whole paragraph.
we have to read the whole paragraph, but that's, as I suspected by RSA, superintendent nominates, school board approves, whether it's staff, whether it's curriculum. That's what our function is.
Yeah, we're here to do staffing, not curriculum today.
I understand, but but overall, that's our, and along the same lines, that obviously the main reason we're here this morning is because I believe as a board, we're trying to do our job to bring to the Timberlane public what is the best way to spend $71,800,000 next year. We got here this morning because a month ago, well, via media, we were informed that approximately 50 people were going to be pink slipped. I haven't verified numbers, but from what I understand, it's over 60 now. Then I also, via social media or via media, some of these people after the 19th can be brought back up to 20. So numbers keep getting thrown around here. We went from 62 now to 20. I've been saying all along, it should be 6 to 10 people. There's all kinds of ways to do this with 6 to 10 people.
Well, Brian, if I could just, and you and I have had this conversation a couple of times, you have to act very conservatively in what you're doing. I think this is a conservative list. I think notifying whatever the number was, 50 people was being conservative with the absolute hope that we're asking back, bringing back, after this list is approved, bringing back another list, which I believe the superintendent is prepared to offer, either today or Thursday, because we have a meeting Thursday night, a regular meeting Thursday night, and probably another list after that. But the reality is, there are some, actually in the budget that the budget committee proposed, and I know our public already knows this, there were cuts in that budget. There were, I think, 20 positions that the Budget Committee had suggested, right? So, I mean,
I guess you're missing my point.
I-
My point is,
I'm going to ask the audience to please,
my point is, on either budget, the budget that passed resoundingly by the voters, or the Budget Committee's budget, neither one of those budgets represented a reduction of 50 to 60-plus Timberland employees. Neither one of them.
Right,
That's
20.
my point.
20 was the number, I
oh,
believe, the Budget Committee.
That's there. That's one way to do it. And what I believe, whether it's Mr. Doobie, myself, Jen, that we're looking at how do we proceed from here? What is our best value at 71.8? Of course, you're going to have at least $1 million surplus. There's all kinds of terms that have been thrown around over the last 90 days, a sweet spot, and if there was, I believe, the superintendent said at one point, okay, my sweet spot is 728. If you give me 728, that'll give me $1.8 million for a surplus. Okay, that means you only need 71 to run it. But that's just one option. That's just one number. We're now at 71.8. So, and I agree with Jen that as we go through this this list in front of us, we don't have the big picture. As we sit here, April 13th, 14th, today's. This doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Myself, I was on the same page as Lee last week. We were looking for yeah, this is great. This is good that that Mr. O'Neill asked for a breakdown where these people are, where they're located, what their expertise is, where they work. Great.
Where they're assigned this year.
Where they're signed. Okay. Now, that's one bit of information. If you just go through and vote for what's in front of us this morning, which represents less than half our staff, mathematically, so it's just over 300 people. We have over 700 people.
Oh, not 700 teaching.
No. There's a total staff of over 700 people in our district. Okay? I'm looking at the numbers even got this morning.
711 is the head count.
711, okay. Now, this document has just over 330, I think, on it.
330 certified.
Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that I don't know how we can intelligently, if this board just approves that document, you are clearly limiting options that are on the table. My suggestion, I'd personally approve the bulk of that document, and then, look, as Dr. Farris said, whether it's 6, 10, whatever, and put the ball back in the superintendent's court. Just because someone doesn't get renominated if a program, that doesn't mean they're not coming back. As we're now finding out anyway. I understand this. I've read this little. I've only read this once, but I've read the RSA on several occasions.
So the RSA is 189. Is this one our authority?
There you go.
What we have as school board authority.
Yeah.
And I believe the lawyer states that too, that we have authority to accept or not accept the recommendations of the superintendent. But again, I'm going to say to our public, this is the core of our educational staff. Don't understand why we wouldn't accept that and move forward. I said Dr. Metzl could speak, and then I'll recognize Sean and Kim.
Okay, Mr. Boyle indicated that we have over 700 staff, and that is correct. A year ago, in October, we had 705, and we're currently at 711. We had 5 teaching assistants that were added due to special needs requirements during the course of the year. School board has the authority to vote on only 2 of those categories. They're broken into 6 categories, and that would be administrators and teachers. School board does not have the authority to vote on any of the additional positions. So it's a little disingenuous to say half the people are missing, half the people aren't required to be voted on. So they're only approving both the administrators and the teachers. So currently, we have 37 administrators on the list that I presented to them last Thursday, and again today. There's 31 administrators. I know that there were people out there sending things out saying that were no administrators eliminated. That's not true. That's a significant reduction in administration, from 40 a year ago, all the way down to 31. It's 9 administrative positions. That's a big hit for this district, as many of your other things are as well. The teaching positions, we're at a point where anybody on this first list, we won't be able to notify them. So these people will all have contracts next year. Those will be issued on Monday. It's a core staff. You know, we've been able to find some money. I have a second callback list that I'd like to present today. And then there's a third callback list if the board is truly here to bring back teachers. I have 2 options for them to look at today. Those are the options that they have, to call back some and then to call back some more. We were able to crunch some numbers and find some more money. I'll let the business administrator talk more about that when his time. Now, as far as how do we come up with 62? Well, it's not 62 teachers, as I indicated at the last meeting. It's certainly not. I actually tried to make this number work, and Mr. Boyle was right, the 71.8, and I had started with, okay, where can some reductions be? And I pulled out a certain number of positions, teaching positions. There were 33 people that represented 31 FTEs. You notice there's a couple people are half-time, so it's a couple more people. I had spent the budget down to $262,000 left. There's no way that Timberlane could operate hoping to get within $262,000 of a bottom line. So then I moved to the next list, and I moved to the administrative list, and we tried to spread this out throughout the district. And I know some people thought the information was somewhat evasive. It's really not. There are certain things I can't say publicly. There are certain people that I don't have the permission to employ yet. We would hold that position for them. Like, for instance, if I only had permission to hire them for a year because they had to get a license, they don't have the license today, they would be non-renewed, and when they got their license from the Board of Education, we would recall them, right? People on an intern license, right? So there's a list there. We have some performance issues. Those are not eliminations. Those are people that were not renewed. The position still exists. We would be posting those positions and looking to rehire them. So when you add up the number, like, wow, that's way more than a couple $1 million. Yes, of course it is. If there were 15 of them and it averages about 80,000, you do the math. You're talking about $1.5 million of it's not savings. Those are positions that we need that we'd be recruiting and hiring for. So, you know, yeah, there were 62 of the slips that went out. They all represent different things. They're not all budget driven. They're not all eliminations or reductions, those sorts of things. So we have this core list. Like I told you, it's not an exhaustive list, and those people will all have contracts. And so we need to build from that, and those were the options I brought back today. The second list, which has a callback, and the third list, and we can bring back quite a few people as early as Monday if the board is ready to act. Thank you, Ms. Sherman.
So as we worked this week to put this information together that we had asked for, I personally kept asking the superintendent, can you provide us more options? Can you give us more people, another list? Show us in good faith that we don't want to cut teaching staff. It's not what we wanted to do. And he has these 2 lists. So we've got this list in front of us, and that's the motion on the floor. Sean's.
Yeah, my question is, I got a couple of them actually, is with this list and this motion before us right now, what it's going to do is to lock in and remove some options that are currently available. And I'm going to be picking out a couple of things out of this. And I mentioned it before, the FLES program.
Yeah, be
That
careful.
cost us
I
a
know.
lot of money. And if what we do is if we turn around and nominate this list, those staff are currently in here. That is going to take that option of this board off the table.
Well,
That is one of the options that I think we need to be very clear about. One of the other things that I think about is we're here today to fill a legal requirement to notify people by April 15th. What do we gain about, besides just fulfilling that, we're going to notify people that, you know, they're continued. But then we have another list coming on out with the next round and a third round. If we, and this has happened across the country many times where you've seen districts, they pink slip the entire staff. Bring back a comprehensive plan in one presentation and show us the options that we have out of this. This nickel and diming us is not seeing us the big picture. We don't know anything that's going on until we vote for this. It's tying our hands as a board. I would personally like to have all options available until the last moment that I have to make a decision. And by us, if we pink slipped everybody on this list, we would in turn, and that would create, in essence, Dr. Metzler could do a complete presentation of the entire program that he's looking to do and bring back the staff that he needs for that.
Hang on a second. So that, just publicly stating, Mr. O'Neill, that's your suggestion, that we pink slipped 700 or,
Because we have to notify, if we don't do this today,
Can't do it today, Sean.
Yes, we can.
You can't, you have to hand deliver and they have to be signed for. I already
Stop.
checked with the
But-
attorney. Can't do it today.
stop.
Okay, done.
then that was the plan then, to make
Wasn't
it
a
this
plan.
meeting Saturday
of
so we
course it
could
was a
do it.
plan.
Stop.
Your
Of
Stop.
course it was a plan.
Oh.
Point of order.
Point of order.
Point of order.
We're trying to work on the motion. I heard what you said, Sean. I would say to you one thing about, and I caution us, when you start to identify programs, then you start to identify personnel, so caution you. These show the assignments they currently have. It doesn't show what they also are certified to teach otherwise, understand? So we could, many times, I'll use me as an example, I'm certified to teach chemistry and biology, but they could assign me to teach general science. So there's some other things that we could do
And
here.
that's
It
the
doesn't mean these pieces are pigeonholed and then that program.
I'm not saying
and
to
again, be
pigeonhole, but they
careful.
would have the flexibility to move around
I believe
in a
he's got-
comprehensive program that was presented to this board, not having to rush this down as a mandate, and as we're saying here and right now, that we can't even make the decision if we wanted to. If I wanted to make that motion following this, to do that, he's saying that's not even possible. And that to me is disheartening, because it limits the flexibility that this board should have, and was told that if we made such a decision, we would have that flexibility. That has been taken away from this board, unbeknownst to this board, and that's wrong.
Kim,
A couple of things to follow up on what Sean said. I want to thank the Atkinson reps and also the other Danville rep. I requested a special meeting no less than 4 times in the last week, with or without administrators. These 4 people were able to attend. The rest of the board, for whatever reason, could not attend. So here we sit on April 14th being told that we cannot make any changes to this nominating list. Another thing I'd like to point out is now we're being told there's a second and third renomination list. I tell you what, this budget didn't change since March 13th. So what this has done to this district is destroy the morale of this staff. Even bringing those teachers back now, as a teacher, I cannot imagine being told I was laid off
speak-
and now brought
Kim,
back. I'm sorry. And to think that now we think we're doing good by doing a second and third round, yes, I'd like to bring those teachers back. Honestly, if I were in that position, I would not come back to this district. So that is my espousing here. I would like to speak now to some of the things that you pointed out, Sue. In third draft of the budget, there was an elimination of 6 teachers, 5 TSSU, and 5 admins.
in the,
And
which round of the?
Third round of the, yeah, it wasn't 25, it wasn't 50 layoffs.
What was the number?
There were 6 teachers, 5 TSSU,
11.
and 5 admin.
11 plus 5 is 16.
16,
So
okay?
I rounded it off to 20, I apologize.
Nowhere near 62. I also want to point out that in this current budget year, year-to-date, which ends March 31st, the last actuals that we received, there is $1.8 million in salaries, FICA, and retirement that is underspent in comparison to last year. I don't know why that is, but we are underspent by almost 1.8 million in
As of
those
what
lines
date?
as of the end of March compared to last March. Another thing that I had requested was special ed contractual agreements. I still haven't gotten those. I had to, frankly, request those on a right to know, and I'm being told now I have another 10 days. I was informed on the last day. So we're being asked to take a look at this entire list with it, as Mr. O'Neill said, in a vacuum, with nothing to go on. And I would counter that we could still notify people in writing today.
Jen, I thought you had your hand up first, but if not, I'll pass you. did you have something you wanted to say? Or-
I gotta collect my thoughts again, sorry, pass me.
So I'll go to Lee, because Lee hasn't spoken, and then back to Brian.
Sure.
I just want to correct a somewhat misleading statement that was made. Mrs. Belcher polled the board, and throughout the week, there were various members that could and could not meet. So it wasn't all the members that you indicated, Dr. Farrer. There were other members that were able to meet throughout the week. It was a quorum that was the issue.
These 4 members, and correct me, Atkinson, Danville reps, were you available Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
And other members were as
Okay,
well.
all right.
Uh, Clearly they weren't, or we would have had a quorum.
Thank you. Brian. Thank you.
Okay, just want to, not the lawyer in the family, however, RSA 294E:7.
Where are you reading this, buddy?
I'm reading, I've got this. This is all about electronic signatures.
But we don't have it, so you just.
You don't have it, I'm just
Okay,
making a
you're just-
point
yes.
about that.
Okay, make your point, sir. Thank you.
Okay, the point is, in the state of New Hampshire, we're governed by RSAs. 294E:C, legal recognition of electronic records, electronic signatures, electronic contracts. If a law requires a signature, an electronic signature satisfies the law. In other words, you can email someone to satisfy the law. Obviously, you can, if anything this board does is today, you can email that staff member. Be great if you did a follow-up and say, please confirm that you got that. The law also says you have to notify them by close of business tomorrow. Hand deliver it, if there's 5, 6, 7, or 8 people. But you can notify someone by RSA with an email. That's a legal document.
So I thank you. So I'm terribly confused, because you said you don't want to cut staff, and yet you want to cut staff. I don't get it.
Well, well, let me help you out. Shouldn't be that confusing.
Yeah.
We're looking for options, so
Confused.
I'm not trying to confuse you.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, we have a bunch of people in front of us on a nomination
Bunch of
list.
people are core teachers, this list. So
You have 330, they're people. These are personnel, Timberlane personnel. By the way, I didn't create this mess, so don't even suggest this.
Calm down
So
a
now,
little bit.
well, it gets kind of a little exciting
Calm
here.
down a little bit.
Now, if we just randomly, and sit back and say, just do this, now, you've heard this so many times, your options are very limited. What happens? Yes, I've been saying all along, you're right, Sue, you and I have had several conversations. There are several ways to implement the $71,800,000 budget that probably only has single digits amount of people that actually would no longer be working here. Right off the bat, we have over 20 people that have sent in their retirement resident. You can leave 1/3 of those jobs empty for next year. 1/3, 6 or 7 people. There's $500,000.
That's not our job to decide.
Of course, it's our job.
No, it's
Staffing's
not.
our job. Of course, it's our
It's
job.
not our job to cherry pick this person, this
Well, that's what you're being
position.
asked to do this morning.
I'm not, I'm asking you, the motion is to accept the nominations.
That's a very large cherry.
Recommendations.
That's a very large cherry picking going on right
Don't
now.
have the authority to.
Of course you
choose
do.
a-
You've just got the letter from the lawyer. Of course you can do it.
No.
Okay, you do have that authority.
Sarah,
Okay. So, obviously, I'm new to the board. I watched this whole entire process over the fall, leading into the early winter from that side of the table. So, I watched the TTA and the TSSU talk to the board at this point and remind them over and over and over again to know the impact of the decisions they were making as they presented a default budget that was not created by the business administrator, was not given to the business administrator before it wasn't. He did not see the budget that was created before it was presented. And when he was trying to ask questions, yes, there was an open dialogue, but he was not anticipating seeing a budget that was essentially unvetted by a professional. You can sit there and laugh all you
Okay.
want, Brian.
Okay.
It's
Brian-
the truth. I sat here and watched it.
Okay, she has the floor.
The majority of the board voted in favor of a default budget that was knowingly underfunded. The special ed director sat in front of the board how many times and explained that there were 5 new placements between the time when she created her budget in September to when the last meeting in February before the deliberative session, explaining why that budget is a constantly moving number. So, and then you all had your let's make a deal, Mr. Boyle tried to get in additional funds to make sure that special ed and transportation and the food service was properly funded in the default budget. And that didn't pass. And then he tried to add 700,000. That didn't pass. Then you went down to 500,000. You all knew so that the default budget had key areas that was not properly funded.
Not true.
They sat there and told you that it was not properly funded.
What was the number?
This isn't a debate. Let her, she's got the floor. I know,
So
but let her
this
finish.
renomination.
Pretty big issue, so I hope you're
Let
gonna
her
recognize
finish.
us.
We let
This
you
is a
finish.
process of renominations that has literally happened year after year after year. Last year, it passed 9-0. The year before that, it was 7-1-1. The year before that, it was 8-0-1. This process has always happened at the beginning of April. Dr. Metzler has presented the renominations list. There's been a discussion explaining the different continuing contract, non-continuing contract, all of those process, and then it's been accepted, and you've been able to move on, and then move forward to increase staff numbers. So I really just wish that we could accept this core list of teachers so that we can get to the next step of discussing the budget, digging into the numbers, and seeing where we can find more money to bring more teachers back in.
Thank you, Sarah. I'll come back to Jen now, because Jen, we're going around to round 2 of speaking.
Well, the default budget's the school board's budget. It's not the business administrator's budget from
Bingo.
when I was watching. And when we talk about the budget that we have, this is the budget that the voters gave us to work with. So I don't really think it's worth our energy or our time to be going backwards and talking about how that default budget was developed. There's obviously a lot of differing opinions about that, but it's the school board's default budget. And the voters had a choice. They had a proposed budget that they could have voted for. They chose not to. So these are the numbers that we have to work with. And the difference between all the previous years and this year, this is the first year that the voters have not supported the proposed budget. So we're in a different place than we've been in years past. So I think we should be looking at this differently. The process shouldn't be the same. We can't just go through the same process without understanding, what is the goal? What is the impact? Does this mean larger class sizes? I don't know what this list means. I think we as a board need to have a discussion about where are our priorities? What do we feel has the most educational value in the district? If we're being asked to move 1.5 million or what, I don't even know what the exact dollar amount is, out of the salary line, transfer it into other lines, then I think that we have the right and the responsibility to know what does that mean? What does that mean to our programs?
And
Does that mean
I
AP
hear
classes are going to be cut? Does that mean we're going to get rid of full-time K option? Like, what does it mean?
I think all of those are excellent questions, but I think it begins here, get our basic 300
But if we do
plus
this
people,
list, then
and
we remove those options.
No,
Exactly.
we don't.
Of
Yes,
course
you
we do.
Madam Chair, you eliminate options.
Okay. I'm sorry, I have an opinion. Mr. O'Neill, your second round for you?
To expand on Mrs. Silva's point, this eliminates an option for us because these teachers have already been, and staff have already been renominated. It isn't like you can, if we decided to remove a program such that we could take those funds and add more teachers back above and beyond what the ones that would be eliminated with those specific programs.
But
In other words, if you have 5 or 6 teachers in a one program that are dedicated to that, if you get rid of that program, we might be able to hire 10 teachers in other disciplines for other programs to enhance them.
plus the 5 that we've already got.
Pardon?
So you've got, say we have 5 teachers teaching a program. Let's do a hypothetical experiment. Okay, so we have 5 people teaching a program. They're all certified educators on continuing contracts with, I don't know, certain rights. And you do away with their program. We do away with their program. They'd be expecting they would be assigned, given some options, that they'd be assigned another position within the school district.
Correct, according to
Of
their
course.
background and their
Right.
disciplines,
Right,
yes.
right, okay, so we wouldn't lose that piece of the flexibility, but you're saying that if the program cost this much for teachers and this much to, I don't know, buy the materials to run the program? That you would take that extra money
And you
and
could
use it
use that to
use it to
repurpose.
bring back some teachers that have
You-
already been pink slipped?
Correct, because you're looking at the entire cost of the program. If that cost is eliminated, including all the supports, incidentals with it, it's not just, labor that's part of that program, you could
Well, I
repurpose
think-
that.
I think this is about people, not positions, so this is people. That's what I think our authority is, these people today on this list.
But these people today on this list are some of them are tied to specific programs, which then we should have a debate on the merits of that program and continuing it in this climate that we have. We approve this as is, we are eliminating that option.
Okay, I'm gonna agree we'll agree to disagree on that. Kim?
I don't think anybody is advocating for the removal of any continuing contract teachers on this list. I certainly am not, but as to Mr. O'Neill's point, some of the other non-continuing track teachers, again, you're limiting your options if you approve this nomination list. And I just briefly want to go back to the budget to answer Sarah's point. The idea that the business administrator was not given the default budget is incorrect. The idea that he did not, on more than one occasion, and I have this documented in writing, had the opportunity to talk to Brian and I and whoever else about the budget is not correct. In the budget committee meeting, the business administrator spoke to the honest proposed budget, and that budget sped is underfunded in comparison to the default budget. So we are putting the cart before the horse here, and we have not even talked about the budget and where they think shortfalls are in this now upcoming budget season to see what we need to move out of salary lines, and yet we pink slipped 62 people, and this board has no idea why, because those salary lines, with the exception of 2 deans which were removed and 1 administrator that was not hired next year, are exactly the same as the proposed default budget by the business administrator.
Any other comments? New information, new thoughts that you haven't expressed? Mrs. Belcher, could you read the motion on the floor?
Sure. Mrs. Mockamer motion to accept the superintendent's list for nominations. It was seconded by Mr. Juby.
If there is no other new comments, I'm gonna call the question then.
I'd like to amend the motion.
I've recognized you, go ahead.
I'd like to strike 10 names off that list. Obviously, I can't say
Can't
which
do that.
names they are. Yes, well, I can't name them, but
Right. So we'd have to go in, I believe we'd err on the side of caution and go into non-public. So do you have a second for that motion?
I'll second it.
Sue, can I on the motion? It's an illegal motion, because they don't have the authority to strike particular names from that list. You do not have that authority.
I,
You can't cherry pick off the list. You can only act on you can ask for 10 positions, and I would select the 10 positions, but you don't get to pick names off the list. The attorney was very clear, and Ms. Sherman can speak to it.
I don't see that clear in here.
Well, I know it.
Well, it's, I don't see it in writing. So,
I'll see it in writing.
well, then we should have had it in writing now.
$1,000 report.
I don't want to read off this. I mean,
Yeah.
because it's confidential, but I read it differently. And I have to go by what I've got written from the attorney.
Can you read the motion back, Mrs. Belcher? Or the amendment, I'm sorry.
Dr. Farah motioned to amend the motion by striking 10 names off of the list. It was seconded by Mr. Boyle.
Again, I'm gonna caution you that we don't have the authority, or the expertise to pick names off this list. It's not our statutory obligation. It is not.
Disagree.
It is not, we have no authority to pick names off a list. We don't. There's no cause, there's no evaluation documentation, nothing has been brought to us that would lead us to cautioning you, this is a dangerous motion. I believe it's an illegal amendment. I really, really do, and I think we're gonna get ourselves in some serious trouble here.
Get rid of the program.
Sure, call the question.
No,
then.
I don't want to call the question yet.
Oh, now we don't want to call the question, all right? I'm gonna give you
Well,
some
because
leeway.
I-
Sean wants to call it, and now you're saying no, so,
Well, I said to call it, but
Can you-
I'll restrict.
thank you,
take
Mr.
away
O'Neill,
my
for
motion.
being, trying hard here to do this. Kim,
I disagree with you.
okay?
I would like to speak to why I disagree with you, but unfortunately, I cannot do that publicly. So I would like to request a non-public based on the fact that I could
Yeah.
clearly show you why I disagree with you based on legal opinion should we be in a non-public. So I'm going to request a non-public.
Under,
RSA 91A, Rule 2, subsection C.
Yep.
you're making the non-public for her, or she's doing it?
She
You
could,
do it?
he can make it. I'll
You're
second.
saying C?
It's
C.
C, reputation.
You have a second?
I think, I
I'll
think,
second.
Thank you, Brian.
Mr. Boyle?
Yes.
Mr. Doobie?
Yes.
Dr. Farah?
Yes.
Mrs. Markham?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mrs. Silva?
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna have to ask you to clear the building.
The non-public session, since it is determined that the divulgence of the information likely would adversely affect the reputation of any person other than a member of the public body itself.
And a second, please.
Second.
Second for Mr. O'Neill. Hold the board, Mrs.
Mr. Boyle?
Yes.
Mr. Doobie?
Yes.
Dr. Farah?
Yes.
Mrs. Markham?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
And Mrs. Silva?
Yes.
Okay.
Before we continue, I was negligent, and we didn't do the Pledge of Allegiance, and I think we should do that. So if you'll all please stand. Mr. Boyle, will you lead us in the pledge?
Happy to. I pledge allegiance to the
flag Before we go on, I want you to know that I believe that we really did some good work. We are working hard to work together, so we're gonna continue in that kind of realm. We're even talking about having some retreats and work together in workshop form, and hopefully have a full board with us. So, here we are back in business.
I'm going to withdraw my amendment to the motion.
I'll draw my second.
I'll withdraw my original motion.
And I'll withdraw my second.
Now I would entertain a new motion. Sir?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the renomination list with the addition of 21 TTA members and restore 10 TSSU members, and to further direct the superintendent to review staffing with a target of less than 15 staff members remaining on the original 62 layoff notice list.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. McAmara, second by Dr. Farah. Any other discussion at this point? If not, I'm gonna call for a vote. All in favor of the motion? It's unanimous,
Fantastic.
and we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.